Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mormonish. I'm Rebecca.
And I'm Landon.
And we are so excited about our guest today. We have wanted to have her on for quite a while, and we finally, our schedules align, the stars align, and we have the amazing Lila Tueller on today. How are you, Lila?
I'm good. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we are so excited to chat with you and get to know you better. And I believe, Landon, that you have a bio that you can read before we get going.
I do. Yep. As you stated, this is Lila Rector Tueller. She's the daughter of Hartman Rector Jr., who was a general authority back when we were growing up. So it's been a while. She has 7 kids, 3 boys, 4 girls. She has 8 going on 9 grandchildren. She's the 6th of 9 children and was born into Mormonism, although her parents were converts. And that's one of the interesting things is her dad, I think, was the first general authority in the modern era to be a convert that was made a general authority.
Right.
She's raised all of her family in the church up until 5 years ago. She loves art. She designs fabric for a major manufacturing company and also works as the supervisor of the general store at Sundance Ski Resort. So up there at the fancy area. She loves science, art, music, ocean, babies, animals, and all the beauty that is found in nature. She also finds people's experiences in life to be fascinating. So that's Lila.
That's Lila. That's a wonderful bio. That bio just makes me smile all around.
Thank you.
That's super happy. No, we're really, really excited to have you on the program today. And I have met you twice. I don't know if you remember the first time. It was at Sandra Tanner's wonderful not memorial. That makes it sound like she's passed away. She hasn't. It was like a celebration. And that was in Alpine last year. Do you remember that? Yeah, there were a lot of people there celebrating. That was and the release of her new book, Lighthouse. That's right. Yes. And then more recently, both Landon and I met you at the film premiere of The Return of Elder Pingree that was at Brewvies in Salt Lake. So
that was fun.
That was really fun. And that's when Landon and I kind of went, hey, Lila, we got to get her on. And that was it. Yeah, no, that was really fun. So I think we'd kind of like just to start by, why don't you tell us a little bit? I think you have such a unique childhood and how you were raised. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about your growing up? And as Landon pointed out, your dad was Hartman Rector Jr., who I also had an experience when I was younger with too. So maybe we'll kind of talk about that as we go along, but we'd love to hear about how you were raised in your childhood and your family and all of that.
Okay. I'll try to just make it a Reader's Digest version. So like I grew up on the East Coast in Virginia, and my dad worked at the Department of Agriculture with one of the Benson sons. It was Reed Benson, and Ezra Taft Benson was actually there at the time too. So that's how my dad kind of got into that little group of the Bensons. And I think that's how he ended up getting called. I'm not even like, that's the story I was told. It was that they kind of name dropped him and said he would be a great missionary. Like he needs to be a mission president and he should be called to be, because we haven't had any converts. So that's how we got called out to Salt Lake. I was about 8, just before my 8th birthday. We moved out in 1969, and we the first thing they did after we were there for a couple of years, and then they sent him to be a mission president. Had never been a mission president before. Usually it goes the other way around. You do the mission president and then you get called, but he did it the other way. So they called him to be in the first quorum of the 70. Anyway, so my life was kind of like, we're going to live here for a little bit and then we're going to go to Florida, and he was a mission president there. Then we came back to Salt Lake. Then he went to San Diego and was a mission president there. Then we came back to Salt Lake. Then he went to Ecuador and was a mission president there. So we were moving around a lot, and I was just kind of getting thrown back and forth between homes and schools. And that was kind of hard because as soon as I'd start making friends, we had to move again. But it was all part of the calling. And my parents traveled constantly. They were traveling all over the world. He was speaking everywhere. And I and my family, my little brother and my little sister and I and my one older brother. The rest of them were gone. We had 9 kids, but a lot of them were gone. We were watched by other ward members. You know, we would get farmed out kind of. So it was an interesting childhood. I don't think a lot of people realize what happens to the kids of the general authorities and what that life is really like. I felt like I didn't even really know my dad. He was just gone all the time. And when he was home, if my mom didn't go with him, which was a lot of the time she didn't go, a lot of times she did go, she would just kind of complain about all the things us kids did wrong while he was gone. And so then he'd be mad and we'd get in trouble. So it was just kind of this, I just felt like I didn't really get to know my dad and he didn't know me, but he knew everybody else. Everybody else knew who he was, but not us kids. So yeah. That was kind of
he's
hard.
a public figure, a beloved public figure in the church. And I'm guessing you must have been one of the younger children in the family. Is that right? If
Yes.
everyone else was gone.
Well, I was number 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the little ones were left and farmed out. Yeah. You just don't hear about that. And then when you do hear the kids talking as adults, they're always just like, it was wonderful. My dad was, it seems like they're just buy into the whole thing. So did you have a sense, did you know like who he was, his role? Did you understand, he's this guy that's way up there in the church? I mean, I know it didn't make it easier, but what was your thought process? Did you understand kind of who he was and his function?
I mean, I think I did. I knew, not maybe right away. It took a minute for me to understand, but it was, right after he was called, he was in the newspaper, and because we moved to Salt Lake, and all of a sudden, there was this big fuss about him, and in our neighborhood, everyone was like, oh, and making a fuss about us. And I just, it took me a little while to understand what was happening, but I realized that my dad was not going to be around. Like he had been around and now he wasn't going to be around. And I think I resented that. I resented that my mom went with him a lot we're talking month-long trips. For a month, they'd be traveling and they'd come back and they'd be home for a little while, maybe a couple of months, and then another month-long trip. So we were just constantly going from family to family to family to family in our ward. So I'm sure they were like,
you would go over to the ward neighbor's house and stay at their house, or
stay for a month.
Wow. So you'd be sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag or something?
Yeah, wherever they could put me.
And were the kids separated? Like you did not go, oh my
wow.
goodness.
We were separated. So my little brother went to a home. I went to one of my little friend's homes. He was only 2 when this started. So he has memories of, from the time as early as he can remember, just going to random people's houses for a month at a time and not knowing why, what was happening. I think it really affected him. And we found out later, one of the families that he was watched at, the father has been put in prison for being a pedophile. So he doesn't know if anything bad happened to him, but because he was too little to remember. So, there was things like that. So it wasn't all rosy. There were fun things about it. We got to go to conference. We got to sit in the conference center, and we got to go to the lunch that they had between the morning session and the afternoon session. It was all very fancy and fun, to do that. We were, there was a place called Aspen Grove up the canyon that it was a family camp, and that was free. And so we would go up there every year. I did that for 11 years straight, went to Aspen Grove. And so I really got to love that place. There was just, we got to go to BYU, free tuition. There were a lot of things that were paid for by the church that made life easier on my parents and therefore us. And I didn't know at the time how much they were making on top of the little, all the paid for things, but I know they were making, they did pay them.
So they were paid clergy, basically. You hear that there's no paid clergy, but they
but there is.
Didn't have any
That's
other
right.
career.
You heard
that
it
was
here.
Their career was the church.
That's right. They were paid. So that's baloney. I think the local clergy is not paid like the bishops and the stake presidents, but those guys up there are definitely paid, and have comfortable livings. They have cars given to them. They have health insurance given to them, full coverage health insurance. They have, there's a lot of things that they don't have to pay for. My mom and dad went shopping at they called it the Deseret Dan's grocery store or something. And it was like, you could just go shop there, and everything that you shop there was free. It was covered by the church for the general authorities.
Wow.
So, all our shampoo and toothpaste and all that kind of stuff was all there. And food, bulk food. So, they made it as easy as they could. And as, years have passed, I've found out more and more about what they're paid now and how much more I think they're paid now, because they have it. They have so much money, as we all know, that nobody's suffering in the general authorities. They have lots of money.
Did you get to know other general authorities' kids, and how well did you get to know the actual, apostles or prophets?
Right.
I'm sure with the 70, that's a lot of people. How often did you get to meet?
Yeah. Well, okay. I would say we went to those family camps at Aspen Grove with other general authorities. So I got to meet their families there. And I also went to high school with, Richard Hanks's family was there. It went to the same school as me. President Nelson's family went to my East High school. So I knew several of his daughters that went to East High. There were kids, some of them went to Highland, some went to, different high schools, but the ones that went to East High, which there were a few, I knew them. And we kind of were tight because we knew we were GA kids, right? So yeah, I got to meet them. And then I did go on a trip with my parents to, we went to Haiti, we went to Brazil, Argentina, Chile, Puerto Rico. That's all I can think of. Those 5 countries we traveled. So I went with my parents for about a month-long trip when I was 13 years old. So they would take each one of us kids once on a trip with them. So I got, cleared from school and went with them and got to travel with the whole group of, it was President Kimball, and it was, Thomas Monson was on the trip. Who else? Several, the GAs from those days that you would recognize were traveling with us, and we were touring these countries. So it was meeting after meeting after meeting. And I was 13 and I was going crazy. It was like,
did you attend the meetings? So you didn't get to stay in the hotel and swim in the pool. You had to go to the meetings.
I would have loved to have stayed in the hotel.
Oh my goodness.
No, my parents wanted me there. I was going with them. I had to put on the dress and the whole 9 yards and sit through these long missionary training meetings. That's what they were.
As a 13-year-old, that must have been hell.
Yeah, it was rough. And my friends all thought I was going to come back with a tan because, we were going to all these warm places. And I was like, you guys, I didn't see the sun. I didn't get to spend 1 minute outside.
I sat in the pews and that was it.
Yeah.
So did you feel the pressure as, like you said, a GA kid? Did you feel the pressure? You knew that you had to put on a certain persona and you had to act a certain way and everybody was looking at you. Was there that kind of pressure? I can imagine.
There was a lot of pressure. My dad would try not to, I think he worried about that a little bit, but he also was like, don't you dare, do anything that I would be embarrassed of.
Yeah.
You behave, you be an example. You need to keep the rector name clean. Make sure that you, watch your P's and Q's and you behave. So there was a lot of pressure there. Don't be swearing, make sure you're not going to the wrong movies and you're not hanging out with the wrong kids. And you're dressing well, modestly.
I got to imagine in high school that had to just been horrible because it's like, you want to kiss a boy, but it's like, oh, if I do that, is it going to get around? Or did you kiss a boy and it got around?
Gosh.
And everyone said, that Lila, she's a...
Yeah.
You went there, Landon.
When we went to San Diego, I was 15. With my dad was mission president in San Diego. I was 15 when we got there, and we stayed for 2 years. So I left maybe I was almost 18 when we left. And, that's just the time that the missionaries are looking cute to me, because they're like kind of my age, a little bit older. And I was like having all these crushes on missionaries and stuff. And my dad, sometimes we lived in San Diego. I'd be in the backyard in a swimsuit getting some sun, and the missionaries would come over, and my mom would come out and be like, oh, get out of here. What are you doing? Run. Here, put this towel on and
get the old temptress.
Clothes on. Right. And then they wanted me to I played the piano. So I had to play all the opening and closing songs to all their testimony meetings that they held in the mission home. And I had to help my mom cook all the meals. So I was like the little slave at the time with the missionaries, and I had to so I sat through, I can't even tell you how many comings and goings of missionary groups where I had to play the opening and the closing song, and then listen to all of them bear their testimony. And it went on forever. And then have the dinner, before they all left, and do the dishes and just the whole thing. And it was embarrassing because I was dating at that time, and I wasn't necessarily dating Mormon boys, because there weren't any. I only had 2 Mormon boys in my high school, and one of them I did date, but the other one I had no interest in dating. And he was younger than me too. So my dad, because he was a convert, he would say, it's okay if you date more non-Mormon boys, just get them baptized.
Wow.
You set the example
to convert.
Right? So he wanted me to like live my gospel, live the values, so that they would want to join the church, right? And being a good example to them.
So it wasn't about who you liked, it was about converting them and making sure they went to the church. You couldn't have that relationship. Wow.
Right. Well, and I wasn't the best at that. I just wasn't the best at that. There was a couple of times where I was out with a boyfriend, and we would pull up to my house, and you could hear the missionaries singing from, as we're pulling in, you could hear them just at the top of their lungs singing hymns. And this one boy looked at me and he said, what is going on in your house? What is that? And I was like, oh, well, they're missionaries. And he was like, what are you talking about? Missionaries? He was so thrown off. And he was like, so your dad is what? And I explained, we're Mormons. And he said, wait a sec, you're Mormon? And I said, yeah. And he goes, so you're one of those weird people that like have multiple wives, and you don't drink, and you don't smoke, and you don't have sex, and you're one of them? And I was like, yeah. I go, do you want to read the Book of Mormon? Like, no. And
the answer
like,
was
bye-bye.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Oh no, my God.
And bye-bye. We're not dating anymore, because he fully was expecting, some action and all of that. And that just wasn't going to happen.
Well, I've got to ask, as a teenage girl, 17, 18 years old, and hundreds of boys, literally 19, 20-year-old boys are coming in your house. I mean, it had to be like you're in a candy shop, but you can't touch anything. And you're a cute girl. How many times did you get hit on by missionaries? Did that happen? And how do you handle that?
Happened a few times. It happened a few times, and my dad would just tell him, knock it off. Yeah, she is not, you do not touch her. She is off limits. And I was young. I was 16, 17, and they're supposed to be focused. But the guys that were in the office, see, they were there a lot.
Yeah.
So I got to see them all the time, and I had a major crush on one of the boys in the office. And I kind of let the cat out of the bag that I thought he was really cute and I was really interested in him. And so the other guys in the office were always teasing him and like trying to get us in the same room. And, you know, they would make little comments and stuff. And like, I really like thought I was going to marry him. I had a dream that I was going to marry him. Anyway, I was 17. He left and went back to home, which was here in Salt Lake, and he went to BYU. And before I knew it, he was engaged like 2 months later.
Of course.
Broke my heart. I was devastated. I thought I'll never find the right one because he was the right one for me. And now I'm just going to have to settle for second best. I'll never find the right guy. And I'm literally like 17 years old, you know?
It's all over at 17. Well, I can only imagine that a lot of letters written home probably mentioned, oh, and President Rector is this beautiful daughter. I mean,
I don't know
hard on the missionaries, right? To have you there. Oh my gosh.
It was crazy. It was good times though. I mean, I look back on it fondly. I learned a lot. I had, you know, some fun experiences. High school was awful. Awful. I had mean girls that hated me.
I bet.
And I was traumatized. They were Mormon. They were the Mormon girls in the school.
I could see that because you're the general authority's daughter. You're the, you're the chosen one.
The chosen one and very pretty. And I could see
my
that.
guts. Yeah, they did not like me at all. And they actually spread rumors about me. I said this on John Dillon's podcast, but that I was gay or bi. I think, I don't even know if bi was a term then. I don't even know if bi was an actual, maybe it was, but that I was a lesbian is what they told everyone in the school that.
Interesting.
Yeah. And I didn't know that and had no idea until I got, when school started. So I moved in the summer of my junior year, before my junior year. So everybody knows everybody. I'm coming in as a junior, cold. I don't know anybody but these two Mormon girls that were in my school, and they went to my ward. So I knew them. We had hung out together all summer, and they had spread, unbeknownst to me, as soon as school started, they started saying, yeah, she's a lesbian. So the boys were kind of like put off, but kind of intrigued.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
you know what I mean?
Doesn't stop most
boys are.
I can fix that.
Yeah,
it's that extra layer of mystique. We don't know what she's doing or who she is.
That's interesting. Whereas the girls were like, thought I was weird, except for the lesbian girls. And there was a little group of lesbian girls in my high school. They were playing tennis with me that summer because I took tennis as a summer school class. And I didn't know they were, I didn't know that. And they're in my tennis class, and they started inviting me over to hang out. Anyway, it got dicey, and I had to call my mom to come get me from their house because I was like, this is scaring me. They're doing weird things.
Not what you expected. Oh,
yeah.
my goodness.
So anyway, it was a wild ride.
That is a wild ride. Oh my gosh. And then I think I remember that you got married probably before going to school. Is that right? Like you were married at a fairly
well, I started BYU and I got married the fall. So I started in the fall, got married the following April.
Okay.
So it was only a
BYU plan.
Standard BYU plan. That's it.
It was super fast. Yeah. And I kind of had made this deal with God because the missionary didn't work out. I said, the next guy that I have a relationship with is going to be the guy I'm supposed to marry. So bring him to me.
You're ready.
I'm ready. This is it. I want to go have a family and have babies. And I'm just going to be, Molly Mormon and all that. And so I actually did when, before I left California, I was going back to Salt Lake with my parents because the mission was over. I was also the summer before I started BYU, and my sister had me come visit her up in Northern California in the San Francisco Bay Area. And she had a boy she wanted to line me up with up there in her ward. And that's the guy I married. I met him and we were, boom, it just happened that summer and got married the very next spring. So yeah, I wasn't quite 19 yet. I was really young.
Yeah, but everybody was. Back then, you were raised to do that. I mean, that was the plan, right? Especially back in those years, the early 80s. That is what we all did. That's what you did.
That's what we were told is that's our ultimate, we're going to have kids and you don't really need to go to school. You can, but you don't really need to because your husband is going to be the breadwinner and you're just going to pump those babies out, man. And it's all going to be great.
As a general authority's daughter or son, is there an expectation that, he's the stake president's son, or he's another general authority son, just a regular, the elders quorum president's son? Was there any of that, pressure to marry someone at some certain level, or is that?
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. I mean, there may be in other families. I didn't feel that pressure that I needed to marry a big name or a legacy kind of family. My sisters had, I had 4 sisters married before I was and a brother, and none of them married special, Mormon families. So I didn't really feel that. It was pretty much whoever I wanted, to fall in love with. And it just happened to be a total pioneer Mormon family on both sides, so they were, multi-generational Mormons, and I just was this one, one step away from being a convert Mormon family, which was very different. My parents didn't know all the, the culture. They weren't cultural Mormons. They had to learn all of that, and they were not super good at it. I'm sure they were breaking rules right and left, and people, we would get the shock look sometimes, like, your dad did what? I thought, because he would have rated R movies playing all the time down in the basement. And I'd have my friends over and he'd say, you guys, you want to watch this movie with me? He loved watching movies. And it would be stuff like, was one of them, Exorcist.
Oh,
he had my friends and I sit down and watch The Exorcist with him. And it was wild. I mean, it was like scary and not, Mormon approved.
Yeah,
Other rated R movies, and he loved the ones where they were swearing a lot because he was in the military. Oh. So he had a very colorful mouth before he joined, which he really cleaned it up. He did, but he thought it was so funny. He would laugh and laugh at the swearing. He thought that was the funniest stuff. So of course, we would laugh too, but we weren't allowed to swear. We could laugh at it, but we couldn't swear. That was not okay with him. But I know he, in the Navy, I'm sure he was, and he smoked. My mom smoked. She had her little gold cigarette case with a C on it, and they drank socially. And they were.
This is after they joined the church?
Oh no. Before.
I was going to say not after. Yeah. How did they join? I'm just so curious how they joined.
Oh, I'll try to say this fast.
You're good. This is fascinating. We're just like completely mesmerized.
Well, it is kind of, I guess, fun to hear when you haven't heard it before,
it's fascinating. So
my mom and dad met. They both lived in Moberly, Missouri, which is a little town. And my mom was only 14 when my dad proposed to her. Oh, wow. He was going off to the Navy, and he knew he was going to be gone for 4 years. And he thought she was the cutest thing he'd ever seen. And he said, I'm going to let you grow up for 4 years, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to marry you. And literally on the sidewalk, they had never really talked before. And he said that to her. And she was like starry-eyed and said, okay. And then he did. He came back he was gone for 4 years, came back and took her away from her boyfriend, and they got married. So he made right on that. And then they'd been married for maybe, she was pregnant with her 3rd baby. They were living in San Diego. He was at the military there. And the missionaries knocked on the door while my dad was away on a trip, on a ship in China. Or something like it. Yeah, Japan. Sorry, not China. Sorry, my throat's kind of tickling. I'm gonna cough if I don't
have a drink. We're all going to have a drink. Landon, get your mug. We're taking a drink break right now.
Break. You guys have coffee?
There, I don't know, something from Swig. Don't tell anybody.
Oh, okay. I was gonna have a nice big Diet Coke because I need one right now.
Yes, that's what I have. I think I have it's Diet Coke with some coconut cream, those signature,
the dirty one.
Only in Utah. Yeah, it's terrible. Yes. Terrible. Terrible.
Anyway, I've had many, so don't feel bad. Yeah, so the missionaries tracked it into my mom, and she was pregnant and had 2 little kids, and they left her some information, and then they also left her the Book of Mormon, and she started reading it. And my dad had been on this quest to find the truth, and that had been a driving force for him. He had been going through religion after religion after religion, trying to find the truth, and he would pray about it. That was his nightly prayer, was, please God, please show me the truth. So my mom knew that he was looking. They'd never heard of Mormonism, had no idea who Mormons were. And my mom let them in, and they taught her, several of the lessons. And she wrote a letter, because back then there was no email. She wrote a letter to my dad saying that she was being taught by the missionaries. And he was scared that these were young men hitting on his wife. So he cut his trip short and got on a plane and came back as fast as he could to see her and to find out what was really going on, right? And she handed him the Book of Mormon, and she said, here, read this. They left me with this. So, and he's been through all these religions, right? And they're all not passing muster. So he opens a book, he says, written by a man, I'll shoot it down in 15 minutes, and he starts reading it, and he got completely sucked in by the Book of Mormon. That was he was a Book of Mormon convert. And he said that it did something to his heart, and he knew it was true. He just knew it was true. So he said, whatever you want me to do, I'll quit smoking, I'll quit drinking, I'll quit all of this right now, today. Whatever I have to do, I want to get baptized. So they had to, at the time, you had to be an investigator for a year or something like that before you could be baptized.
Wow, what if
and he was like, we're not waiting a year, we're not.
I think it's a couple hours now.
Right? I mean, you don't even have to take the lessons. If somebody says, I want to get baptized, they just go take it and dunk you.
Yeah.
I think my dad might have had something to do with that. He invented
I remember that era, yes.
Yeah, so that's how they got it. He and my mom, and they got baptized separately. He was on a ship, and they had to baptize him in ice-covered ocean, out in the freezing ocean, and my mom got baptized in a font. So totally different places, but that was how they came in. And I mean, he was all in, man, on fire. Wow. And still was really his whole life, pretty much.
Yep. I remember, do you remember him at all, Landon? Maybe you don't, because you're younger than I.
Like I say, the name, as soon as I hear the name, it's like, yes, because it's such an unusual name,
Yeah.
Right.
Hartman Rector Jr., but I couldn't put the face with him.
Right. So I remember that he wrote some books, I think, maybe some pamphlets. So I do remember his name. And then, of course, the one reason I always wanted to connect with you, I'll tell this story now very briefly, is because when I was in college, I actually got to sit on the other side of his desk in the church office building. I got to go visit him in his office. Yeah, this would have been 1986. And you were probably married by that point with
had a couple kids.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I had a boyfriend at BYU who went on a mission, went into the MTC. And then while he was in the MTC, he decided to come out. He decided, not that he didn't believe the church, he just thought a mission was not for him. And he was going to Honduras, a very scary place in the day. There had been some missionaries killed the year before. Yeah, so he just didn't want to go anymore. So he came out. So his family disowned him at that point, asked me if I would disown him also, because that's how you kind of help people get back on the track. Yeah.
Oh, the shunning. Yes.
Yeah,
the shunning.
exactly. So I wouldn't do it.
That's
And I've told
terrible.
the story before, but somebody in my boyfriend's family was connected to, it must have been one of your brothers, because I remember my boyfriend said my older brother knows the son. Anyway, it was something connected to your family. Anyway, they arranged an interview for us to go to the church office building and talk to your dad. Yeah. And I think it was an interesting moment for me, because I kind of thought, well, we'll tell him our story and he'll probably understand, that my boyfriend just doesn't want to go, and he'll give us some life advice and we'll move on. I mean, I just, I don't know what I was thinking, but when you say your dad's a passionate guy, yeah, you already know what happened. He's such a passionate guy, and being a convert, and I did not know that about him, but yeah, he definitely talked to us in a way that just said, you're making a huge mistake. And, you as a young Latter-day Saint woman should definitely do all you can to push him back into the mission. And you as a Latter-day Saint young man, you need to be going. So it was a very interesting experience. It was my first and probably only experience, except for running into President Oaks on an airplane once, but actually interacting and talking. So but he definitely right out of the gate was super passionate about making sure that we understood, no, you guys, and I can see it from his perspective. He probably thought, oh no, these young people, this is a moment where they either veer off this way or that way. And so he was definitely trying to encourage us, but it was really interesting. Yeah. And for me, I walked away from that going, oh, interesting. Okay. So I think that these Lord's anointed are just men, because he didn't really understand what I was trying to say, or didn't really say the things that would matter to me. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. And my boyfriend, he walked away just going, I deserved that. So it was a different kind of a take that we had on it. For me, it did kind of put me on a different path, because coming to that realization that, I understand why this man is saying this to us, but he is just a man. That's what I realized. And that kind of allowed me to keep a little distance through, the next 4 decades that I stayed in the church, but still keep a little distance. Dear. Whereas my boyfriend, we did not marry, and he went on, he's still active today, raised a family in the church and everything. So, but interesting, just an interesting encounter. But I definitely could tell that he was extremely passionate about the religion. And now that you've told me the story of his being a convert and, choosing it as opposed to being born into it, I can understand that he would have no time of day for these punky little kids that are going, we just don't want to do it.
Yeah. So, he thought that he had the truth, and that was it.
So I've always kind of wanted to connect to you and tell you that story, because it was kind of a pivotal story about your dad that happened to me when I was younger in 86. So, and so at that point, like I said, you're married and you have kids, and then you raise your family in the church, and you're the daughter of a 70, and your kids are the grandkids of a 70. And so tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, okay. Well, I married a guy who had been a fanboy of my dad. And I didn't know that until we'd been dating a while. And then he let up the cat out of the bag, that he had all my dad's talks on tape and had been listening to them through his whole mission before we met, right? He didn't know me, but he loved my dad, and he knew all his talks by heart. He could tell you everything about my dad. It was like he was obsessed. So when we met, of course, he was, I'm marrying her because that's Hartman Rector Jr.'s daughter. And that means I'll be in tight with him. And, he was like, it was like meeting your favorite celebrity, so he was really excited about it. I didn't know there was all that. He proposed to me after 9 days.
9 days?
Well, he said it wasn't a classic proposal, but he told me that he had a dream. And this is on the 9th day. I was visiting my sister, and he was in her ward. So we were hanging out every day, because she lined us up on the first day, and then it was every day after that. And he said, I had a dream last night that we got married in the Salt Lake Temple in April of next year. And I said, oh, funny, I didn't have that dream. He said, right. For you. Yeah, I was like, don't we both need to know that? But he said, no, I did. And he goes, I just have this feeling inside that that's what's going to happen. We are going to get married. And I was like, whoa, okay, slow down, cowboy. I wasn't quite on board yet. I was excited to date him, but we'd only known each other a few days. So it was a bit fast for me. And then we dated as soon as I went to BYU. I was a freshman and he was back at BYU after his mission. He'd been home a year. And we just had this whirlwind thing where he just basically swept me off my feet, didn't let me date anybody else. And we got married super fast. So then we started having kids right away, although it took me a little while to get pregnant. I don't know why, but we had our first child in 81 and we'd been married in 80. And then we just kept having them. That's all I can say. He worked at the MTC and he went to BYU and I went to BYU. But after I had my first child, I dropped out because I just thought, no, I'm here to have children. That's what I'm here for. Be married.
It's too hard. Yep. That's a classic story. It's just too difficult once you start having kids. It's too much.
So I stopped, kept having babies. I only wanted 4. That was my cutoff. I wanted 4 kids. And he was down with that, allegedly. But when we had the 4 kids, I told him, I said, okay, we're having a yard sale. We're getting rid of the crib, the stroller, the car seat, all that. We're done. And he was not, the plan was, because I'd had all the babies, it was his turn. And he would go take care of it himself, right?
Yes, that's right.
Easy, in and out, you know.
Yep.
And he didn't. He had appointments, but he kept canceling them. And then lo and behold, shockingly, I got pregnant with another one. That was my 5th. And I was upset about it. But I kind of just, you know, okay, you didn't follow instructions. So we have another one. And then that happened 2 more times. Where it was 5 years later, I got pregnant again. 5 years later, I got pregnant again. And when I had the 7th one, I was like, that is it. When I found out I was pregnant, I said, you're not touching me. We're done. Yeah.
I punished knife yourself.
What was that?
You went and got the kitchen knife yourself and said, I'm
going to take care of
I was ready to. But he did, then at that point, he took care of things. And so that was the last baby we had. But I was 42 when I had my last child.
Wow.
So, yeah. And he's still living with me. His truck's right out there. He's my little caboose. But, you know, that's what happens when you had one at 42.
Yeah.
They're around for a while.
They're around. I get that. I had my last at I was like a couple months away from being 40. So yeah, it's interesting.
Okay, yeah,
and then you hit like, you know, your 50s, you're like, oh, I'm kind of tired. What am I doing with a 14-year-old? You know?
I know.
And none of your friends have that, right? Your friends are like, you know, they're grandparents already. And you're like, what was I thinking?
And my friends are out, they're empty nesters and they're out partying and traveling and stuff. And so that's been interesting. My last 2 have kind of been, well, their dad died, you know, so they hang with mom. And they kind of glommed onto me. Those 2 youngest ones really did want to be here. And I understand that, you know, they went through some trauma.
Of course.
So,
absolutely. Yeah. Cause I think that I learned from some of your other podcasts that you've done that then the marriage finally sort of came to an end at a certain point after a number of years, quite a number of years, I think.
Yeah. 34.
Yeah.
34 it was when the divorce was final.
Right.
We had a rocky relationship. It had just been hard. We were too young. I was too young. Okay. I'll take the blame. I was too young. He was 22. So he was pretty young too. You know, we were both youngsters and there was just a lot of pressure on all of us. And he came from a very, very staunch Mormon family. They were harder on him than my parents were on me by a long shot. And his sister married a GA's son. So it was like, and his parents served several missions and were mission presidents. And I mean, they were upper echelon Mormons. He was stake president for a long time, and, really great people, really great salt of the earth people. But there was a lot of Mormon culture in there. And, he expected me to be a certain way that I wasn't. So that caused conflict. We just had a rough time. And we really just at the end there, when it was our 33rd year approximately, we just both kind of realized that we kind of wanted to be happy. He wanted to be happy. I wanted to be happy. So we did separate and get a divorce. And it was probably the most amicable divorce you could hope for. There was no lawyer. There was no money. It was just, okay, we're parting ways. We did it online. It was literally $150 each. And it was I moved down the street. I was in the same ward. I lived right next to my parents, next door to my parents. And they didn't even know we were divorced. They didn't even know I was living next door.
So you felt you couldn't tell them. It would break their heart.
No, I couldn't. I could not.
No.
They were so old at that point. They'd had every single child had gotten a divorce. Every single one of their kids, except
all
Dan,
of your brothers and sisters.
Except Dan, my brother, who had died. He had died in a hiking accident, and they still had a marriage, a beautiful marriage. They were happy. And of course, the happy married is the one that passed away.
That's the accident. Oh my goodness.
And how my husband had always promised my dad, we will never get a divorce. We will never let you down. We'll be there, So it was really hard to tell them. And another one of your kids is, hit, like, it was like dropping like flies. And so I waited 2 years to tell my dad. My mom had Alzheimer's at that point, so she didn't really know anything that was going on. But my dad was still very aware. And that was a hard day. My husband said, or my ex-husband said, you need to tell him. And if you're not going to tell him, I'm going to tell him. Because we were still having him over every Sunday for dinner at the house where we lived.
So you two would get together. Family. You would get together, have dinner together. And so when your parents came over, it was just like, of course, here they are. They're married.
Yeah,
and here's
we
the
are.
dinner. And...
happy family. My kids were in on it. Everybody was keeping the secret from my dad. Because he was 80. No, he was in his 90s. Yeah. So it was like, he's too old. We don't need to drop this bomb on him. Why? Yep. So we didn't until my husband was like, he was tired of having to make up little lies. Because my dad would say, where's Lila? He'd come over unannounced. Where's Lila? And he'd have to make up a lie why I wasn't home.
Yeah.
And why I wasn't at the ward, because I was going to a different ward by then. I was living in Lehigh. So it was just too much to do. And I understood that. My dad handled it unbelievably. He was just, he kind of laughed. He said, really? Well, that makes a lot of sense. He says, I now everything's coming together. And he was like, well, you seem to be good friends. You're getting along. And I said, yeah, we actually are better friends now than we ever were married. We're way better. Like, we couldn't do marriage, but we were great friends. We still did trips with the kids. We traveled, we did all kinds of stuff. I was hanging out there all the time. So that was an interesting day, for my dad to find out we were divorced, and he wasn't even upset. So I don't know if he'd forgotten that all the other kids had gotten a divorce.
Or he was so used to it by then. He's like, another one.
Yeah,
but I understand that. No, I have a family member who divorced. Gosh, I think she was divorced almost 30 years and never told her parents. And I know she was able to do it just by kind of saying, yeah, no, she was able. And this is a family member who I was a young child while they were a married family member. So we were always told that this family member was off, that he was in the military, or that he was somewhere else, and we just never really knew. And then, of course, as I was an adult, I realized, they've been, not officially divorced, but separated all these years. And then finally, when the elder family member, her father passed away, in his 80s, and she's in her 60s, finally, then she's like, okay, now I can go ahead and actually get the divorce. But I kept thinking, that's so sad, because she could have had a whole different life.
Yeah,
She was only in her
remarried
40s when they separated. She could have gotten married again. All these things could have happened, but still, she just felt she could not disappoint, the patriarchal kind of part of the family. And
it's a lot of pressure. Yeah, it can
pressure.
be. Yeah. Especially, when I felt so bad because my dad and mom had lost all their kids had gotten a divorce except for the one.
Right.
And that was just so much disappointment. I just didn't want to be another disappointment.
Wow.
So, and they were old enough that, we could kind of pull it off for a while there.
No,
But
it's like not telling them that you've stepped away from the church. That's my situation.
Right.
It's just like, why really go there if they're not really going to understand? But then again, it stops you from having a more authentic relationship. But then again, maybe you never did. I mean, it's just so funny. All these little barriers there in the
you're
way.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I can't imagine waiting 30 years. That's a little ridiculous, because I'd want to move on with my life.
Yeah, this was like way back in the day, but still. And so all this time, though, you were an active member of the church and all of that. That is so interesting.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100% in.
You never really it seemed like you just had gotten the divorce and you were just getting your life going, and then your ex-husband got cancer and you started taking care of him, and then your father, and sounds like you almost you went to launch and you couldn't quite.
I know, I couldn't launch. Yeah, that's really true. It was one thing after another. Yeah, my mother died, and right after, but this is before I left the church. She died. Then my ex-husband's mother died exactly a year later on the same day. And then Hal, my ex, got sick. And he was diagnosed in late 2015, early 2016, somewhere around there, and died the end of 2017. So we had been divorced since 2014. But when he got diagnosed, he was okay for a while. Like it didn't get to the point where he needed help until probably about early to mid 2017. Like he had 18 months where he was doing chemo, and it bought him some time. And then he was losing the battle. It was already stage 4 when they found it. So he was losing the battle. And that was when I had been living in Lehigh, and I realized this is too hard on my kids. They were the ones that were there trying to take care of him.
And they would have been teenagers, like younger teenagers, right?
Some were married. Some of them were married.
But your youngest ones, they would have been pretty young.
My very youngest one, when he died, was 14.
Yeah, like a younger teenager. Oh my gosh, how rough. Jeez.
He was 14. Yeah, so that's when I stepped in. I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go take care of this. I can't leave him and my kids dealing with this. And so I quit my job up there, and I moved back into the house and started taking care of him. And he ended up having to go to a rehab place because he slipped and broke his hip. The cancer had invaded all of his bones. So they were really brittle and almost like powder, like they were falling apart. And he slipped and fell on his 60th birthday. We had a big birthday party for him out in the street. We had food trucks, the whole ward neighborhood, and everybody who'd ever known him came to that. It was beautiful. But he was he died a month later. So he was right at the end, and he was still able to walk, but he slipped and fell going to get the door, and he shattered his pelvis right there on the floor of the family room. And so we had to get him into a hospital situation then. So it just went swiftly downhill after that. And it was really a hard, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It was just brutal. And it was devastating for my kids. And, you know, it was just the hardest thing. They loved their dad. He was a lot of fun with them. And, you know, he was a good guy. You know, we weren't great as a married couple, but, you know, he was a good man. And my dad loved him. They were tight. They were best friends. So it was really hard on my dad to lose him. Anyway, so that's kind of what happened there with the illness, you know. And I had been dating, but I wasn't like ready to marry anybody.
Right.
And he had been dating. I had met a bunch of his girlfriends. They came to his party. He invited all these girls that he had been dating on Mormon websites, you know. And there are all these cute girls, and they all came to his birthday party. It's like they all knew each other. It was kind of funny. I had met them at the house. I mean, I wasn't bothered at all about him dating. I wanted him to be happy.
Right.
I really, really wanted him to be happy. The hard thing was he had gotten all these blessings, priesthood blessings.
Healing priesthood blessings. Yeah.
Promising him that he would be healed.
Oh.
There was no, if it's God's will. They were like, you will be healed. You will go on. You will see your grandkids marry. You will live a long and fruitful life, which is what his patriarchal blessing said too. And then he died. And it was so, I was like, that was probably the biggest crack in my shelf that day that he died, because it was like, I still thought that the priesthood blessings were going to somehow miraculously save him. And somehow he was going to cheat cancer. And when he didn't, I thought, this is bullshit. I really did. That was a big one. It was like, my kids fasted twice for 5 days.
Oh.
And they were all sure he was going to survive. He was going to make it. So like, what does that mean? You know, when you get priesthood blessings promising you that you will be healed and then you aren't, does that tell you that you don't have enough faith? Does that say Hal didn't have enough faith? Yeah. Was it my kids? Did somebody cheat when they were fasting? You know, it's like we look at ourselves and think, what did we do wrong that blessing did not happen? My dad gave him a blessing. His dad gave him a blessing. Our home teachers, we had the bishop, we had the stake president. He had multiple blessings, and every single one of them told him he would be healed.
That he would be healed. See, and this was probably the last couple of years you've heard the faith not to be healed, right? Which is a great loophole, because it's also, you didn't do enough, but then it's like, if it's not supposed to happen, you have to have the faith to let that happen. It's a great out, because I think a lot of people feel like you felt, what happened? That blessing, it was supposed to work. Now we know you just have the faith not to be healed. So there's an answer for everything.
So it's like, why do we even have
exactly. If
you have to have the faith that they won't work. Come on. What is that?
They can be really detrimental. No, my husband has a story on his mission where there was a baby that was dying. He was a brand new missionary. His companion kind of like shoves him into the room and says, give this baby a blessing. So my husband does it. And of course you're supposed to say, you're going to be fine. You're going to, and the baby wasn't fine. The baby died. I mean, I think my husband still remembers that, about why was I put in that situation? He was traumatized, it's just, it's problematic.
Yes. And he's probably thinking, did I not have enough faith? Did I do something wrong? Was I supposed to say something else? Yep. I thought I was supposed to say the healing blessing. What I was, it's too much to put on a person.
Yeah.
A person giving the blessing, they're supposed to channel God's will on cue, somehow. That's just not, and it doesn't work. Only works sometimes. It's like the same amount that people live or die when they have a disease is the same amount of blessings that work. Yeah. I will say that I think it works when it's a placebo effect. If somebody maybe does not, I have in my family, very close family member who it was more of a hypochondria situation. And then getting a priesthood blessing from, an area authority,
instantly, the recovery, but it was absolutely the placebo effect.
A mental thing.
Yeah, it was exactly. It was more of a mental issue. So yeah, that's interesting. So you mentioned that's the first crack in your shelf, because I don't think I have ever heard your story of your faith journey story. If you'd be comfortable sharing a little bit about that, because I don't think I know that.
Okay. Once again, I try to be brief, but I have a tendency to wax long.
Yeah,
so
you don't have to be brief. We're good. This is absolutely fascinating.
My story is kind of brief. And I think it's because all along growing up, seeing my dad as just a man, seeing that all the brethren are just men, that they're not anything special and that they make mistakes. I think I always kind of knew and was a little bit not so sure about my testimony in that regard. As far as leaders go. I also struggled with the DNC. I never believed the DNC, not for 1 minute. It sounded so culty and weird, and the language in it was just, it's Joseph Smith channeling God and telling, Emma that she needs to allow him, all these things. And I just never believed it. But the Book of Mormon, I was sucked into that, and I read that thing 150 times if I read it once. I just loved the Book of Mormon. My kids all have memories of me reading it every night. I just always read it. And so I really believed that until one day. So I had a lot of shelf items, and I would always say one of them was, why does God allow pain and suffering? Why does he allow babies to die? But pedophiles and serial killers are still tromping around, but the babies are dying, from leukemia and things. I just could not understand why God would allow things like that. And it just, people would say, oh, well, we chose that before we came. It just never worked for me. I was like, how do you know that? You don't know that. You're making that up. Why do you think we chose that? That is an answer. That's a primary school answer. We chose to come here and suffer because we look around and we see we're all suffering. So we must have chosen it, right? So this part of life, we're in the celestial kingdom, all the stories, they just didn't always work for me. So I had this shelf loaded up with questions I was going to ask God someday. And then one day I was minding my own business, getting ready for the day, and I had the TV on, and somebody was interviewing a guy who was a cult expert. I don't even know who it was. It might have been Hassan. I don't know. But they were going through a list of cult characteristics of a cult or criterion. And I'm listening to this, and the first one was a charismatic leader who thinks that he is talking to God or for God. And he believes that he has, he wants to start a new sort of religion. That's number one. Number two, they set up a strict moral code that they themselves don't necessarily have to keep. Number three, they start wanting to have sex and marry multiple women. And this is a Mormon thing, right? And I'm sitting there, I'm like brushing my hair going, what? And I thought,
oh my gosh.
The more they went down the list, I thought, am I in a cult? Is this a cult? And I was freaking out, like sweat literally was starting to pour down my forehead because I felt, I was like, oh my gosh, I am in a cult. Because every little thing I was going, check, 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 check. Oh my gosh, check. They want to start, they move the group of people to a place away from everywhere else. They try to isolate the people. I'm thinking the trek to the Great Salt Lake Valley. And then, they start controlling what you can eat and drink and what you can wear. And I was like, oh my gosh, garments, no alcohol, no this, no that, the word of wisdom, just everything that they mentioned fit. So that was a huge break. That day I walked around, literally didn't have any spit in my mouth. I was panicking. the whole day. And then something, I don't know, I just kind of put it on the shelf, right? I was like, well, that was just coincidental. And we're not culty. Like, I don't do culty things.
Right.
And there's nothing culty really. Well, the temple kind of, but I don't like to go to the temple. So I'm not going there anymore. I just stopped going to the temple. So then the biggest thing, I kind of went on my way. And then in 2019, it was 2019. I'm living here in this little house after my dad died. We sold his house and all that. And once again, I'm minding my own business. And one of my girlfriends sends me a video by Carolyn Pearson about the ghost of eternal polygamy, which is a book that she had written.
Yes.
And she goes, will you watch this? I'm scared. My boyfriend gave it to me to watch it. I'm scared to watch it. She goes, will you watch this? And I was like, sure. Yeah, sure. So I turn it on, and she's an active believing Mormon, but she's talking about all the stuff that Joseph Smith did and all the polygamy. And she's just laying it out there like, I should know this. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. He didn't practice polygamy, did he? Or did he? Or wait a minute. And I started freaking out again. And then I remembered my brother many years earlier, when I was probably 16, 17, 18, was involved in Sunstone. He was the editor, publisher of Sunstone back in the day. And he would have talks at my house with my dad and my other brother and Paul Toscano and Margaret. And they would have these long talks at home until 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I would hide and listen. I would hide behind the couch or wherever where they wouldn't see me and listen to the whole thing, because it's fascinating. They were talking about all the polygamy that Joseph had been doing, and that he had gotten Eliza pregnant and Emma pushed her down the stairs, and just all these stories. And I was freaking out back then, but I asked my dad, and he said, oh, those are just, don't worry about that. Those are just rumors. It's just, anti-Mormon propaganda. Don't worry about any of that. We don't even know if it's true. These are stories. So in my young brain, I believed my dad, and I went on my merry way thinking there wasn't any polygamy with Joseph Smith. And when she told me, when I read that, I think it was a podcast that I listened to, I freaked out again. I had my whole meltdown again, the whole sweating, shaking. It was a panic attack. And I was like, that's it. That is it. I am done. If the prophet did that and lied about it, I'm out. That's it. I don't need one more. That's it. I'm done. And that was it for me. I never went back to church. I never prayed, not even one more time after that. Stopped praying, stopped reading the scriptures, just knew it wasn't true anymore. And then I started watching Mormon stories. Because, you start going down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, you try to find out what else is out there. Who else? Did you have any other family members of your brothers and sisters? Anybody that was out, or anyone you could talk to?
I had an older brother, my oldest brother, my younger brother John, and my younger sister Lucy. They had all left before I did.
Okay.
So I'm on the phone. I'm like, okay, you guys.
And they're all going, she's out.
Yeah, they're like, woo, high five, and he was like, I didn't think you would ever leave, Lila. He goes, I honestly didn't think you would. You were so in. And he goes, I had to walk on, eggshells around you because I was afraid I was going to freak you out whenever I'd say anything. And I was like, I am so mad. I am so mad that I didn't leave decades ago. Like I was 57. Yeah. I was like, what? Oh,
yep.
Oh, all
we understand.
That
yep, we're right in
that. We get it.
50s.
We were in our 50s too. Yeah, we get it. It's a different experience when you leave after 5 decades than these lucky people who figured out at even 30 or something. You have your whole.
I would kill to have those
different
years back.
for us. Yeah, very different.
So Lila, can I ask you? And you may not know this, but you said that, you'd heard your dad talking about those things, and you just found those out. Do you have any sense do you think anyone in the 12, what's your sense? We read a lot and we can tell that they know some of the history and they're spinning it. Is your take on it that they really believed and they tried to hide it? Do you think any of them didn't believe, or that they were, why weren't they upset by that? Or, what's your take on it?
I've thought about this a lot. I think B.H. Roberts definitely knew.
Yes.
And he lost his testimony.
Yes.
And he ended up staying because, they made it, they sent him off. They got rid of him as quickly as possible. As soon as he brought it up, they're like, get him out of here, so
go on a mission.
They threw him under the bus in conference this time too.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
I know. I think B.H. Roberts knew, and I think, the pressure in there, and it's a pressure cooker in that 12, the 15, the top 15.
Yeah.
I think they know a lot of things, but they only in code probably speak to each other about it. It's kind of like the taboo stuff, and they are so highly motivated to stay in. They have money, they have fame, they have power, they have the world at their feet. It's just too much to lose. Their investment is too big. That's what I think. I think even if they know and they have lost their testimony, they would never let it on to any of us or admit it, even maybe amongst themselves. I think it's kind of the unspoken. Like, we don't talk about that. Yes, there's problems, but we don't discuss that. This is a positive moving forward church. We're looking at the future. We're not looking back.
Yeah.
They don't want to look back.
And it's the
because they know there's problems.
What's
that?
Probably the ultimate confirmation bubble, I guess, when you're in
confirmation bias bubble
all the time, talking to each other, telling each other.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's okay. And if it's like, it's okay with him, I guess it's okay with
him.
Kind of like when you go to the temple with your parents, I guess, and you're going, what is this? And my dad's okay with it. My mom's okay. Maybe it's okay.
Yeah.
It's so true. I mean, it is that confirmation bias. It's that everybody else is doing it. Am I weird? Maybe it's not, maybe I just need to go along. And I think there are those that, especially in the past, that have known and they covered it up. We know that about, was it Smith, Joseph
Joseph
the one that cut the vision out of the book. And
Joseph
they knew
the
problems. Yeah.
Put it in the safe.
Yeah.
He knew. They've had to have known. The ones that were buying the forgeries, they knew.
Yeah.
They're trying to cover that stuff up. They're like, we got to buy it because we got to hide it. We don't want anyone to see this.
Yeah.
So they know, but they can't go there. It's like, I don't know. I'm trying to relate it to something else that we can all relate to, I guess we can all relate to that church, but
like a dirty family secret that you've got.
Yeah, like a dirty family secret where you protect. Yeah. And everybody knows you protect. You don't talk about it. You don't tell because it's the family name. It is like that. That's a great analogy. Exactly.
Yeah. So I think they continually brush it under the rug. If it crawls back out, they quick brush it right back under. They talk about the future and how great things are going now. We're moving forward. And if it's not going great, they're willing to change the temple ceremony. They're willing to change whatever they have to keep people in. They want to keep everybody happy and quiet. And so they're just doing this really good job as far, they had to do those gospel topics essays, right?
Yes.
They had to do that, but they put a major spin on them, right? To keep their faith promoting. They are trying their best and they don't tell anybody. So it's like, if you have the questions, go there. If you don't have the questions, we're not going to tell you.
Yeah. Don't go there.
Don't go there. Don't even look on our website if you can help it. And we're certainly not going to bring it up and tell you about it.
Yeah.
So it's just like, I can't imagine the cognitive dissonance that goes on in their positions right now. They've got to have it. They've got to. I don't know how they sleep at night. I really don't.
What's your thoughts
I really don't.
on this SEC thing with the money? And how do you think your dad would react to such a thing? Because
they all know
we kind of
now.
sat back and we were going, someone's got to raise their hand and say, okay, I can't
do this.
I can't support that.
You would think so.
Nobody
You would
did,
think so. There, maybe it will happen later. And it probably would be anyone below the top 15.
Right.
Maybe you want someone a 70 or something. Once you're up in that top group, there is so much skin in the game that they would lose. They would be destroyed, and their families too. So they just can't go there. I think they just figure, well, I'll just write it out and die never saying a word about what I really think. I think it was Didier, or one of the other 70s who's foreign, I'm trying to remember, knew and admitted to the guy that left, Hans Matson.
Oh, Matson.
Yes.
Yeah, the Matsons. He spoke to one of the 12, and that guy admitted to him that he knew there were big problems, but he just couldn't do anything about it. Yeah. So that's kind of where I think a lot of them are. I do think there might be some who really don't know, because it's so hush hush. They really don't know, but most of them have got to know. You would have to. You're seeing, they're in those meetings talking about problems, and I would think that it would come out here and there just enough that you would figure it out. But it's really rare for one of them to get the courage to do something about it. And
they have everything to lose, like you said, absolutely everything to lose, which is crazy. So then after you have your faith crisis and you talked it over with siblings and families, it sounds like maybe you started to reach out and get involved in the post-Mormon community a little bit, things like that. Did you find some kind of community like that? Because some people don't. They have no idea where to look. Other people dive right in. So
well, that friend that sent me that thing, that she and her boyfriend, when I said, oh my gosh, and I told her, this is true, I guarantee it, this happened, because I remember my dad and my brothers talking about this. We decided, there was a John DeLynn thing a couple nights later at the Community of Christ Church. And we decided to go. And John DeLynn was speaking in the group, and I was fresh out, like still reeling from it all, still traumatized. And so my friend and I went, we sat there, and I kept raising my hand and talking and saying things. And then afterwards I went up to him and I said, my dad was, I told him who my dad was. And he goes, oh, he goes, your brother, I know your brother. He left, he talked to me. I've heard all about this. And he goes, I knew you were having trouble. Somebody leaked the story to me that you were having trouble. And I racked my brain because I hadn't talked to anybody. I didn't know how he would know, but he said, I've heard. Maybe it was my brother that told him. I never found out. But he said, I'm going to have to get you on. We got to talk. I'm going to get you on my show. Well, they didn't get me on till after RFM and Bill Reel did. I did one with them first.
Okay.
Because I was watching their show. And I wrote an email and I said, I love your show. You guys are awesome. I'm a daughter of a general authority, and I just lost my faith and I'm freaking out. And so he said, who? So when I told him, he goes, oh, well, we're going to get you on. So that happened first. But anyway, I think people, are kind of intrigued by the family life upbringing of a GA family. And, I had a big family. So we have, most of my family is out now. There's 3 sisters that are still in. And one of them knows that it's not true, but she still goes to church. She remarried, they've all divorced. She remarried a guy who is not a member, and they moved to Texas, and he keeps telling her, listen to your sister, she's right. And then her son left, and he was a bishop in upstate New York.
Oh, wow.
And he had his faith, and then he saw my podcast out of the blue and freaked out, sent it to his whole family, and they're all like, TBM. So I didn't really like that he did that, because now I'm outed.
Yep.
But he left. So like little chunks, little people are dropping off, little by little. I just found out one of my daughters left. I didn't even know it 2 days ago.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Cough drops. There you go. That's right. No,
Everyone drink again.
I'm so, wouldn't that be interesting to find out about the extended families of, the general authorities that in our age group, we all revered back then, and just to see where everybody is at now, because you would imagine that they would all be strong and in for millennia, right?
Yeah,
and it's not
you would think,
happening.
but not with the internet. Yeah.
No. Yep. That is the big difference. So,
yeah.
Oh my goodness.
I think it's got to be tough for Lila though, because your identity seems to always be tied to your father, and it's, I'm the daughter of a general authority. I guess when the first time I met you, I had no idea who you were. And you're a lovely person, so it doesn't matter. You're
a lovely person,
the daughter, of a general authority. But I think you do give that ability to peel behind the curtain and kind of see, what do people in those echelons
really
know
like over there. Yeah. Well, and I do think my dad was a little bit different.
Yes.
In that he wasn't a cultural Mormon. Most of them are, multi-generations of Mormonism, and he wasn't. So he didn't really care about, my brother's hair being short. He didn't care if I dated non-members,
Right. Yeah, that is very different. Now, I wonder, does that, he was not an apostle. Does that have anything to do with it? The fact that he was a convert?
Yes,
I wonder
believe
that.
it does. Boyd K. Packer did not like my dad at all. Made it very clear he didn't like him. And I think that's the main reason. He said that my dad was just not cut out of the right cloth. And he was a little bit of a maverick too. Like he was he broke rules. He didn't like the rules. So when he was a mission president, he kind of went crazy and let them baptize people that shouldn't have been baptized. He was trying to win a bet. He had a best friend who he had baptized many years earlier. Our next door neighbor baptized him. Now he's a mission president at the same time as my dad. So they have this bet that one of them is going to baptize more than the other one. And my dad is nothing if he is not a competitor. Man,
wow.
Such a competitor. So they were literally going down with vans, piling Mexican field workers into the vans, promising them food. We're going to go take you to the steakhouse, and we're going to get you some food.
Steakhouse.
Yes, steakhouse. Literally take them over there, and they'd have some food there, like whatever they could muster, right? Donuts and things like that. Give them a 5-minute rundown of what the gospel plan of salvation. Have the font ready, and just bring them in. Just baptize them all. Where they literally had 5 minutes of a choice, and it was like, hey, if you do this, you can come back next week and we'll have donuts again. And you can join our ward they'll take care of you in the ward. So they were baptizing thousands and thousands of these Mexican field workers that didn't even speak English. And so he was breaking the mission rules all over the place. And he had Vaughn J. Featherstone flew in to give my dad the what for breaking all the mission rules. And by the time Vaughn J. Featherstone left, he stayed for several days. My dad took him all around, talked to him about how they had this plan. When they got him baptized, they'd give him a calling and get them going to the temple. And that's how they keep him in. He told him he had this little plan and everything. Anyway, by the time Elder Featherstone left, he was on board and went back and said, let him do it. President Kimball said we would be baptizing by the thousands. He's doing it.
Yeah.
So just let him do it. Now it's up to the ward to fellowship all these people in. Right. So
and was this San Diego area? I remember.
Diego.
Yeah, I remember the stories about this. So,
Yeah.
but your dad was doing what was expected. That was what the message from the top. Exactly. You've got to baptize thousands. So your dad's creative. So he figures out how they can do it. And I guarantee those members are still on the rolls today.
Oh, you know it. They're on the rolls. Are they going? No. They've left. They probably only went once, if that.
But but they're still on the rolls because they don't even know what they're on or that they need to get off, or they're even being counted. So, oh my gosh.
But boy, K. Packer still didn't like my dad. He did not like what he was doing. And so I think he was the one that kept him from ever moving up the ladder to being an apostle. And then he was made emeritus at 72. So yeah, that was the end of it.
And there it was. Wow.
Yeah.
No, I love it because you have a window into what it was like, and especially decades ago, where it was a totally different world in the church, completely different world with the apostles and the level of hero worship, I think. I mean,
oh my gosh,
it was off the charts back in the 70s. It was just,
the church was growing. It was really growing.
Yes.
And it was exciting, to be a part of it. We didn't have the internet kind of letting any of the secrets out of the bag.
Yeah.
We were all just completely lied to. I mean, I don't know if they ever thought that it would happen, that it would ever be made manifest. I think they thought they could hide it forever. The stone in the hat.
Who could foresee it? Yeah. Who could foresee it? And now that those things are out, they're trying to address them with explanations that make sense, but nothing makes sense. And now this last conference more than ever made me see that they really are just trying to become mainstream Christians. I mean, we're taping this before Easter, and I think about how at conference they said, oh, of course we're going to celebrate Good Friday. Of course, Palm Sunday. When I was growing up, you didn't do that. And you kind of looked down on friends and other religions that did that, because what are those holidays?
That's not.
Yes. Isn't that funny?
The restored gospel. Yeah, we don't do crosses, and we don't do Palm Sunday.
Oh my gosh, I know. And that's why I think it's important for people of a certain age who left after decades to still kind of tell people what it was like, because even my own kids, I'll say it was like this and they'll go, no, it wasn't. And I never heard that in seminary. I'm like, yes, it was. And you cannot gaslight me and tell me that it wasn't, because it was. I remember. So it's important.
My kids that went through the temple, they're like, the temple, there's nothing weird in the temple. And I want to say, you weren't doing this and this. And they're like, oh, Mom, that never happened. Like, come on. No, you didn't have to say obey. And I was like, oh, man.
We did. I know.
I can pull it up on the internet for you, but they don't want to hear that.
There it is. No, it's important. It's a living testimony from people that are more of our age to say this is what the church was. But I also have no problem saying that growing up in the church in the 70s and 80s, a lot of it was very wonderful for kids, activities and parties and water skiing. I mean, none of our kids have anything like that today in road shows. And so there's a reason that we all stayed in. It was a wonderful social. I mean, of course, there was the dark side. Now things come to light about, abuses and interviews and things like that. But still, overall, there was a lot of camaraderie, a lot of friendship. So, it was a double-edged sword, I think. But it's important to keep talking, I think, which is why we had you on. So there it is. And did you have any last questions for the lovely Lila? And then we'll all go take cough drops and probably take a nap and go to
I'm ready.
I just appreciate it coming on. It was great to get to hear your story and to kind of peel back the curtain and see behind that. Definitely, that was all the people you're talking about are the people I grew up, with, and they were my general authorities and my apostles. And so it was good to hear that and get a kind of a background story. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. Thank you so much. I feel like, you asked, what am I doing now? And what's great about being on the other side. And I literally was racking my brain. I thought, I'm just living my life. I'm not doing anything.
And
special.
That's it.
Yeah,
But it's your
I'm living
life.
my
that
life.
That's what I'm saying.
Right?
You're living your life. That's what I mean. That's
According
it. Just
to
to be able
my
to say
terms.
that. Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
exactly. My terms, no rules, nobody's telling me I can't
Yeah.
or I have to or any of those things. That is the best thing ever. It is. That is the gift of the faith crisis, you know.
Yep. Coming out on the other side.
Reclaim your life. So much better. Yeah,
Yep.
I'm much happier.
Oh,
In every way, happier. I can't think of one way. Well, the one way would be that my kids probably view me as having dropped off into the deep end.
Yep.
Some of them, but some don't. Some of them get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's hard because I raised them that way, they don't.
That's the hard part. I taught them that, and now I can't blame them if they think that.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't.
So many of us in that scenario who leave, after decades, that you're like, you have some kids that get it, they understand, maybe they've also left, and others that just think, you worry about the relationship. So that's a whole nother episode. We'll have you back to talk about that kind of stuff. Because seriously, I think it's great to talk about, people that are going through the same kinds of things. And when you leave after decades, you have, like you said, parents on the one side, you're in a sandwich, basically. You have kids, looking at you from below up, and you have parents looking down at you, and you're just in the sandwich in the middle. So there are different, dynamics to that it's good to talk over with people that understand. So yeah. Another episode. I can see it now, Landon. Let's
all right. Let me know.
And there it is.
Okay, it was really fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Lila. This was absolutely wonderful. Everybody, please like and subscribe, and you can hit the notification button if you'd like to get notified right away when a new episode is hot off the presses. And Mormonish will sign off for tonight. Thank you, everybody. Thanks. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Mormonish. We really appreciate our listeners and would love to hear from you if you have a story you'd like to share. You can email us at mormonishpodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, mormonishpodcast.org. And don't forget to look for us on YouTube and like and subscribe. Keep joyful, everybody.